Hi, I'm O.C. Ferrell, and today we have Greg Marshall with us. Greg is at Rollins College, and he is one of the top experts in the field of marketing in the area of sales. He has a successful textbook, he has a lot of business experience in the area, and he's a very successful consultant in the area. He also is very interested in ethical conduct in sales, and I think he has a lot of good advice for you. Greg, what are some of the challenges that an entry-level salesperson will face?
This issue of new salespeople and their entry into the sales world from an ethics perspective is very important. Let me give you some perspective from my experience on probably the single biggest challenge to new salespeople when it comes to ethics. And that is that in most professional selling jobs, you have a lot of personal freedom. By that, I mean that you may not have a boss or manager who is working with you in the same office at the next desk. In fact, your boss may be hundreds of miles away, or your boss may actually be a continent away if you're a global salesperson. There's an enormous amount of freedom in many sales jobs. And of course, with freedom comes responsibility. A lot of new salespeople don't know how to handle that much freedom, and because of that, it can create some ethical challenges in the sense that if the organization doesn't have very strong codes of conduct, very strong ethical standards, and doesn't train their salespeople along those lines from the very beginning of their affiliation with the company, it can create some problems for that salesperson in terms of their own ethical compass.
Greg, what are some of the areas where there's culpability for a sales manager who actually accepts unethical conduct on the part of his or her salespeople?
Well, yes, sales managers are quite culpable when salespeople are unethical. In fact, maybe more than almost any other profession, because of the nature of the sales job, sales managers must themselves be extremely ethical in how they go about performing their management and leadership duties. Probably the worst case scenario is for the salesperson to be able to observe their manager not handling their own job, their own duties, their own responsibilities in ways that are completely up and above board. So put yourself in the role of a salesperson observing a manager that is cutting corners, that is not dealing with clients ethically, that is not dealing with their people ethically. And imagine how that would impact you as a salesperson in dealing with your own customers. Doesn't that send a signal that in fact anything goes? I always advise sales managers that they are in a very visible role in a very visible industry, and that everything they do is monitored carefully by their salespeople and by those salespeople's customers, and that only the highest ethical standards are acceptable in their role.
Greg, what should be the moral compass of a salesperson?
Well, as human beings, I think we all know, or at least should know, that having a personal moral compass that guides us in the right directions throughout our entire lives is really the only way to properly interact with everybody that we know and do business with. The moral compass, when it comes to sales, means to me that because as a salesperson, I am personally, directly, the face of my organization to my customer. No one else is as closely aligned in the customer's mind with my company than me. That is an awesome responsibility in terms of how I behave, and I want my moral compass to always point me in the direction of only behaving with my customers in the same level of professionalism, with the same level of ethics, and with the same general level of business acumen as I would want to be dealt with if I was them. So it's really quite simple. I want to deal with my customers the same way I would want to be dealt with if they were doing business with me.
Well, Greg, what should a salesperson do if asked to use unethical sales tactics?
Oddly, perhaps, sadly, perhaps, salespeople not infrequently are asked to do things that are questionable, both by their customers and, unfortunately, sometimes by others in their own organization. Hopefully not their direct sales manager, but it is not unusual to find requests from both directions to do something that are outside of the salesperson's own internal ethical standards. When it's a customer, frequently they might ask for things like special pricing that's not authorized. They might ask for some special consideration, quote, under the table for doing business with you. They might ask you to do some kind of extras for them personally. You must not engage in those activities as a professional salesperson. It is a slippery slope. Once you've done it once, you will never be able to do business on a professional level with that customer again. End of story. If it's somebody in your own organization who is hinting around or asking you to perhaps do something in the field that's not entirely appropriate, and particularly if it's your manager or member of management in the organization, what you should do, of course, is not do it, but you must find a way within the organization that you work for to report this, because your organization's own ethical code of conduct is one of the most important aspects of the business model to be maintained. And of course, sometimes it's easy to be a little scared to report it, to confront it, but I can tell you this, if you don't do that, it's not going to get better. And in fact, if you do go ahead and do something that you're asked to do by another member of your firm with a customer that you know is outside of the realm of ethical standards for the firm, you will end up going down with the ship, and none of us want that.
Thanks, Greg. We want to thank Greg Marshall for his insights on sales ethics, and I think that these could be very valuable to anyone who's going into the sales field.